I'm losing my mind. Clearly, look at me. Action. Hi there, I'm Phoebe Jeebies, and welcome to yet another episode of Phoebe Gets Baked, the show that everyone has a heart on for. So here we are. And what are we making for our special Valentine's Day episode? Something romantic and decadent and, of course, red. We're doing a classic with a little twist, or I guess, a little roll. Red Velvet Swiss Roll! So, without any further ado, let's get to it. The very first thing we're gonna do to make this Swiss roll is preheat our oven to 350 degrees, and we're gonna line a cookie sheet with parchment paper and then grease it. Grease it real good, because we need this cake to pop out real easy. A Swiss roll is typically made in a smaller pan, called a jelly roll pan or a Swiss roll pan, but I don't think that's something that most people commonly have in their kitchens. And you know I like to try to make my recipes doable at home, so we're doing a variation of a Swiss roll using a standard cookie sheet that you would have in your home for making cookies on, or roasting vegetables, or whatever you put in the oven. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get a towel, one that you don't mind maybe getting a little bit of red food coloring on it. So I picked a red one, go figure. And you're gonna sprinkle a bit of powdered sugar all over that towel. And you could probably guess, but this is the surface that we will be turning out our cake onto after it comes out of the oven. And we will roll it up in this towel so that we can get that classic roll shape. It's a whole thing, I'm gonna tell you about it when we get to it. The first thing we will be doing to actually put our cake batter together is running our flour and some cornstarch together through a sieve. I have two sieves because you want to sieve this twice, so I'm just going to run it through one sieve, right through the other into the bowl. If you only have one sieve, that's fine. Just run it through that sieve twice. The reason we're doing this is because we want our cake to be light and not to develop as much gluten. Gluten from flour is good when you're making bread, not great when you're making cake because it's going to make it tough. We don't want tough. We want soft and pillowy. So that's why we're sieving our flour and mixing in some cornstarch to really make sure that it is light and airy. So now I'm going to do my flour, 10 tablespoons, otherwise known as almost 3/4 of a cup. This wig is so tight, I can't think. Oh, what was I on? 4. Okay, so I washed back the tape and I did indeed put 11 tablespoons while I was rambling away not counting. So I took one of those out. So we're off to a great start. Very first ingredient, I couldn't even measure it right. 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch. Now to the second sieve. It's like beautiful powdery snow. Now we're gonna sieve in our cocoa powder and our baking powder. We only gotta sieve these once. Got a 1/4 cup of cocoa powder right here, and a teaspoon of baking powder. And now we're gonna give these a whisk until they are mixed nicely. Now we can put these ingredients aside and we're gonna work on our eggs and sugar and all that. Now we're gonna take 4 eggs and we're gonna crack them into our bowl, whether that's the bowl of our standing mixer or a bowl and we're using a hand mixer, or you can even use a whisk. You do not need a hand mixer or a standing mixer for this recipe. Then you're gonna wash your hands. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
And now we are going to whisk our eggs until they become frothy, which will take about 3 minutes. I'm frothy. I'm the eggs that love to whisk. By Khalees.
I'm bossy. I'm the first girl to spin on the track. I switched up the beat of the drum.
They've gotten nice and frothy, which if you're not sure what that looks like, there's little bubbles. It's lighter on the top. It's looking, it's frothy. Oh, here we go. Frothy. See? Froth. 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 Frothy. Froth. Off with my head. Off with the circulation in my head, at least. This is where the true red velvet part of our cake is coming into play. Red velvet has an interesting history. I'm not a red velvet historian by any means, but my understanding is it is a classic dessert from the 17 and 1800s, a Victorian dessert. And the red velvet the color came from the reaction between cocoa powder, buttermilk, and vinegar. That reaction created a maroon color, and that was red velvet. However, in the 1950s or 60s or something, the food dye guy, the person who owned the company, was like, oh, well, I gotta figure out how to sell my food dye. So they changed it up and they said red velvet, cheaper to make it this way, vanilla, butter, and red dye. And that is how we got the red velvet we know today, which is way redder than what it classically was. I'm doing it the classic way, and I'm adding some red dye because we really want a red color for Valentine's Day. So that's my brief history of red velvet, which may or may not be completely accurate. Fake news. Who knows? You're the one getting your news from a person who is dressed up like the Queen of Hearts. So, that's on you. Anyway, 3/4 of a cup of granulated white sugar. Now a tablespoon of canola oil. Do you notice there's no butter in this cake? Can you believe it? In fact, there's no butter in this recipe. She's giving you versatility. Butter beware. Next, we're doing a teaspoon of vinegar. I do apple cider vinegar because I prefer the taste over white vinegar. And finally, a teaspoon of vanilla. Mix it together until well combined. That's good. Now we're gonna add our dry ingredients into our wet ingredients. Dry ingredients. And now we're mixing them until well combined. We don't want any lumps, none at all. And don't forget to scrape down the side of your bowl to get all those ingredients incorporated. Last things last. Is that a thing? Last things last, we have to add our dye. I'd say anywhere from a half teaspoon to a teaspoon, depending how red you want it. This is a Valentine's Day treat, and I want it to match what I'm wearing, so I'm gonna put in a teaspoon. It comes out the same color it goes in. All right, our batter is done. Now we can move it to our pan and give it a bake. Our cake has come out of the oven. You bake it at 350 for 8 to 10 minutes. Mine was in there for about 9 minutes. And in one fell swoop, quite confidently, you're gonna turn your cake onto your powdered sugar towel, and you wanna leave room on one side of the towel so that you can roll it into the cake and make your roll. So we're gonna do it real quick and confident. We're gonna see how it goes. Ooh, it's hot. And the key to a Swiss roll is that you have to do all of this part right after it comes out of the oven. You need to roll it up while it's still really hot, because then as it cools, it's going to remember this form, so that when you unroll it later after it's cooled, you can put your filling, roll it right back up, there'll be no issue. So we're just gonna turn this over, and then we just start to give it a roll. You take this, you put it aside, you have to let it cool completely to room temperature. So now while our cake cools, it's time to make our filling, which is a cream cheese and mascarpone filling. Yum. We're doing the paddle attachment if you're using a standing mixer, and let's make some filling. So So we've got our 8 ounces of cream cheese and 4 ounces of mascarpone. And before we do anything else, we're just gonna mix those two together until they become a lovely, silky consistency. And with our cream cheese and our mascarpone whipped together, we're gonna add about a teaspoon of vanilla extract. We're gonna add, my secret ingredient, a 1/4 cup of Greek yogurt. If you don't have Greek yogurt, you can also use sour cream. And give it another mix. And now the final ingredient, it wouldn't be sweets without the sugar. So we're gonna add some powdered sugar. I'll do anywhere from probably 1 to 2 cups. And I'm gonna add them a 1/2 cup at a time and check the texture and the level of sweetness to see how I like it. Anything that involves powdered sugar, I always do it to taste. The powdered sugar is also important because it includes cornstarch, which is going to help thicken up this filling so that it stays set inside of your Swiss roll. So you do want to include it. I know it seems like a lot, and it is! And that is how we make frosting. If you're curious what this is looking like, there you go. See how thick it is? Now we're going to spread our filling. Now we're just gonna roll it right back up, no towel. And we're gonna use a serrated knife to cut off some of these ends so they look nice and pretty. Covered. And into the fridge. Our Swiss roll set in the fridge. You can see that it's set. You can see that there's a nice little swirl. The final thing you can do if you really want to go the extra mile in your presentation is just dust it with some powdered sugar. And if you happen to get any cracks, the powdered sugar will cover those. Don't we love that? You can always cover our mistakes with powdered sugar. We know that on this show. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Phoebe Gets Baked, for coming on this very special date night with me. Oh wow, it's so long. There's no way I'm gonna be able to fit it all in the fridge. If you enjoyed this episode, you can follow me on social media. My Instagram is @phoebejeebiesnyc, right there. If you enjoyed this video and you want to express your appreciation, you can send a tip to me on Cash App or Venmo. My handle, just the same, @phoebejeebiesnyc. And don't forget to like and comment. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Happy Valentine's Day, whether you're celebrating it with a significant other, significant others, yourself, your family, your loved ones, your pets. See you next time. Got 3/4 of a cup. Ooh. Like for part 2. It's good. Don't eat this batter though, it has eggs in it. I'm not telling you to eat your batter.
She's a lady. Whoa, he's a lady.
How's your head? Much better, thank you. Off with your head, but I just said it was fine. It's a lot of things meeting in that.